Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashim Kumar. 1 year after Karol Nawrocki entered the presidential palace, Poland's political landscape looks markedly different. His confrontational presidency has reshaped relations between government and opposition, fragmented the right and intensified constitutional tensions over executive power. Joining us is Stuart Dowell. He's a news editor here at TVP World. Stuart, welcome back. Great to see you.
Hello, Ashim.
Hi. So it's the 1 year anniversary of President Nawrocki being put into that position. He got there with 10 million votes, so it was a fairly decisive, vote. How would you characterise his presidency so far?
Well, after 1 year, I think we can say that the biggest winner of Nawrocki's year is Karol Nawrocki. And that's because the other parties have been suffering during that time, with the exception maybe of Confederation. But if we look at the governing camp, Karol Nawrocki, when he came to the presidency, made it his goal of his presidency to bring the government down, or at least make sure that in the 2027 election, Donald Tusk loses the election and somebody from the right wins. He hasn't achieved, he hasn't brought down the government. In fact, they're polling at the highest at the moment. But their entire programme has been blocked by him. The government is largely unpopular, and there's no obvious route for them to win power in 2027. It's not impossible, but the way the configurations look.
So he's certainly weakened their foundation, their base, has he?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, what are the biggest elements, the biggest components that Nawrocki's been able to kind of block, which have made that difference to PO's support base? Well,
he's, if we're talking about the vetoes, he's made 41 vetoes. He's passed about 255 acts. 41's a record for any president in the modern era of presidents. The big ones, I guess, are the one on wind farms. There was one on arrangements for informal partnerships. That we should understand that really being for LGBT partnerships. The other big one was the Safe Defence Act. But the government have shown ways to counteract some of these.
Right. What are those ways?
For example, with the SAFE Act, there was a ready-made solution for the government. Okay. The Safe Enabling Act was simply to create a fund which government could bring those funds into Poland and then distribute them, spend them. There was another fund which existed. It's not quite as good.
On defence. This was on defence.
Yes, that's right. The other ways, for example, with the crypto, the Regulation Act, simply to push the act back to Nawrocki 3 times, and that act still hasn't been passed, but by pushing it back 3 times, it kind of underlines to voters and polls that Nawrocki is really the person blocking after 3 times.
Right.
And raises kind of unpleasant questions for the governing, for the right about their links to crypto markets and all that kind of thing.
Right. Unpleasant, uncomfortable, perhaps all of those things. But nonetheless, he has exercised quite a lot of power over what happens in this country. Are we talking about 2 parallel power bases here?
Karol Nawrocki has, in order to achieve this goal, he's tried to create this kind of quasi-presidential system of government. He's pushed the Constitution to the limits. The Constitution gives him quite a lot of tools. In Poland, we have a semi-presidential system, so he has the veto, he has power over appointments, has power over appointing ambassadors and judges and generals in the army and that kind of thing. And he also can send acts to the Constitutional Tribunal, and he can convene a cabinet council, which was a tool that he wanted to use to convene the government together and then dictate to them like naughty schoolboys and girls, why aren't they running the country better? He tried that once, but Donald Tusk kind of outsmarted him really at that at the meeting, and he hasn't done it since. So he's tried to create this this system where he controls the agenda, he sets the agenda. But I would say that Tusk and his government has been quite successful at pushing back. It doesn't mean that that the government has been able to pass its reforms,
right.
And ordinary Poles have lost out on all the provisions in all those acts that have not come into life, and Poland has really lost a year of trying to get things done. Right.
I mean, it does make one wonder, you know, if that energy had been expended in actually passing laws and making changes, how much more effective that would have been. But nonetheless, now, of course, President Nawrocki represents the peace, the right of the government, of the social spectrum. But the right isn't really a unitary body, is it, or a unitary set of parties? They're very fragmented. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and I think that's where Karol Nawrocki kind of ironically has. That's why we can say that it's been a good year for him, because the big irony is that the party. The reason why Karol Nawrocki was chosen by the leader of Law and Justice, Jarosław Kaczyński, was because after Law and Justice won the 2023 election but lost power, it saw a Confederation party eat into its voters on the right. He chose Karol Nawrocki as a political outsider, but somebody who could make that bridge between Law and Justice and the further right. And then if he won, he would be able to draw back those voters, achieve the 40% that he wanted to win the next election. But in fact, the reverse has happened. That Law and Justice continued to lose support to Confederation, and then Grzegorz Braun's splinter group splintered off at the time of the presidential election. And that was all happening even before Mateusz Morawiecki recently split again on the centre-right side, because that was an effect of all of that. Because while Jarosław Kaczyński set Law and Justice on an attack path towards the far right, and it kind of left the centre open. Morawiecki saw his chance, set up his Development Plus parliamentary faction. So the right has fragmented into these groups, and that increases Karol Nawrocki's influence, because it needs somebody to eventually bring them together, because they're disparate now. They have different agendas. In one sense, it's a strength that, like a kind of market segmentation, right. Each of those groups can talk directly to different sections of the right-wing vote. Yeah. But there are big differences. Morawiecki's pro-Ukraine. He has a practical approach to the European Union, but some on the far right want to leave the European Union. How do you bring that together? You need a patron.
Right. So, you know, you mentioned the elections coming up next year. Is Nawrocki influential enough? It's a big question, really, to bring the right together to cause PO a problem?
I think that it really depends on the. I think the influence will be had by the parties that gain the most. At the moment, the two confederations together are polling at around 25%. If they increase that any more, they're going to be surely the dominant grouping on the right, and that will have a large effect on what type of government can be created. But if there's incompatibilities between these groups, then Karol Nawrocki can help to bring them together for sure.
But
yes.
You know what I find interesting, Stuart, is that despite Nawrocki behaving in this recalcitrant way, really, his popularity hasn't declined that much. You know, what is it that makes him this popular and keeps him there?
I think there are a few things. To right-wing voters, to voters who are inclined towards the confederations, he's an authentic voice. That's where Law and Justice have struggled, because they're trying to attract those voters back, and they've they put in their candidate, Przemysław, and the result is that the voters don't regard him as the authentic voice of the further right. And also Karol Nawrocki, he certainly has charisma with those voters. And
he's young.
He selects his issues well for that group of voters. For example, he's had a huge 10-point boost in his approval rating since around May, and that coincides entirely with this period of the dispute with Ukraine over the historical grievance. Right. And although that's caused Poland a lot of problems, and it would be better if that hadn't happened. Karol Nawrocki's seen a benefit from that because it plays well to the voters.
Is Nawrocki the man to be representing Poland on the international stage? I mean, he's quite pally with President Trump, isn't he? But generally, is he sending out the right message when he gets on a plane?
In fact, if we're looking for one of the positives out of Nawrocki's year, many analysts are pointing to the foreign policy and his good contacts with Donald Trump. And if that produces, at the moment we're having the 6-month forced posture review in the United States. They're going to decide how many soldiers are going to be where in Europe, the bases. If Poland comes out of that well, and Karol Nawrocki will certainly take credit, even if Poland gets another base with permanent soldiers, Karol Nawrocki will take credit. Although the government will say they're also working very, very hard towards that. So some people say that it's good for Poland to have a dual track. That Donald Tusk can talk to the Europeans with the safe loans, for example, and Karol Nawrocki can talk to the Americans.
Right. Stuart Dowell, as always, the clock has beaten us. Thank you for coming along and sharing this analysis with our audience. Brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.